Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and participating this afternoon. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. The big news, that guy is running for president again. We're talking about former President Donald Trump has announced his bid to run for president in 2024. And we're going to deep dive into the discussion, talking about everything from its implications and its impact on democracy. We'll have that conversation. Also, let's discuss how there's a new survey that shows that young adults are now very uncertain about the future of birth control access as a result of the Roe v. Wade decision made by the Supreme Court earlier this year. So now, where does that leave the next generation in understanding? And certainly, let's talk about the conversation that's kind of gotten some steam on social media. Is Nas relevant? I'm going to take it a little further. When we look at older hip hop artists and their relevancy, doesn't matter, considering that we are in the culture that we're in. We're going to have that conversation with you. So stay with us. A lot to get to on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay. In preparation for today's show, last night I was thinking about, how we're going to present this information. And I'm not sure what to say about this story. Look, let me just tell you, folks, I had to talk to a number of people yesterday, a couple of folks, I had to talk to a friend, talk to Nira, talk to a couple of folks about this place that we're in politically in this country, right? And, trying to make sense of it all. But then when you see certain things happen in real time, in real life, you feel compelled to want to point out the big elephant in the room. So I'm trying to figure out how a former president who has been impeached twice, who has open investigations, who has been the inspiration of an insurrection and storming on the nation's capital. How is he able to run again for president of the United States? So I wanted to have this conversation about this situation because it blows my mind, folks, to try to understand what exactly is going on with this situation. All right, so former President Donald Trump made it known that, he wants to run because he feels like America is going in the wrong direction. This is what he says. America is going in the wrong direction, like that he called the lunatic left is taking America down. Okay. And so we're at this place, and I want to get your take on this because I really want us to kind of go further into some of the underlying dynamics of what's at play here, of his decision, and more importantly, how should the American voter respond? How should Black voters respond, right? Because I am clear about one thing, folks. I am very clear about one thing, and I could be completely wrong, but I am clear about one thing. We cannot have a conversation about going to the polls in 2024 until we have another conversation that precedes that, which is how can a man under this much scrutiny, controversy, and legal implication able to get on the ballot, able to submit paperwork to file to run as a candidate of the United States for the United States president? How is that how is that possible, folks? I mean, I'm really serious. Now, have we ever had a president that has lied? I mean, look, all presidents lie. We understand it, but I'm talking about the magnitude of this situation. A man who has promoted the big lie that the 2020 election was illegitimate. A man who said that the election was stolen. A man who has benefited from loopholes of the system, whether it's talking about the loopholes for his businesses or whether it's talking about his political career, right? A man who has taken documents and has stored them in his personal residence, right? For months at a time, right? Documents that are considered to be highly sensitive, documents relating to of other countries, warfare, documents relating to military equipment, documents relating to other top secret information, right? How can a man of that does all of this able to run for the president of the United States? So I'm clear. Like, there can be no conversation about we need to get out to vote. We need to make sure that people understand the point in this and that until you address that elephant in the room, which is how can Donald Trump run for president in 2024 amidst all of this controversy? All right, let me just share with you what the New York Times reported about this in regards to the Biden administration and how they plan to proceed with this situation. Take a look at this, folks, and then we'll bring our special guest on to discuss this. But of course, I want to hear your take on this. So make sure y'all jump in the chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, blackstarnetwork.com, and of course, Facebook. And I would love to hear what you got to say about this. All right, let's start off with this piece from the New York Times. This writer put something in the New York Times, and I thought it was pretty interesting, but it's like also kind of insulting, just a little bit to me. And so I'm gonna share it with you, and maybe you find it to be insulting as well. I don't know, but here it is. It says, quote, inside the West Wing. Take a look at this, folks. And if in Keenan and Ariel, if you want to show the headline, you certainly can. But it just says, inside the West Wing, a small group of presidential advisors have been working to develop a plan for how Mr. Biden and the White House will respond to what they expect will be a constant stream of invective from the former president now that he is formally a candidate. Mr. Biden will continue to underscore his belief that Mr. Trump is a threat to democracy, advisors say. But his political handlers are determined to show that Mr. Trump's 4 years did not yield actual accomplishments for the American people. Oh, okay, here's the problem that I have. Here's the problem, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I might be on to something. But you tell me, y'all can, correct me. But here's the problem that I have with this strategy and this approach. The problem is the Biden administration, the Biden team, the president's team is acting as if that first there isn't this elephant in the room, that he shouldn't even be on a ballot, given all that he's done and gone through and all the stuff he's a part of, right? Okay, so we're going to act like this is a multiverse. We're going to act as if those things never happened. So if we act as if those things never happened, we just jump to, okay, let's jump to policy. Let's look at what we can expect as a barrage of policy attacks, vision attacks, attacks about all of these other things relating to the systems and attacks on on democracy, right? All of these things. The president, I'm saying the current president, President Biden, and his team are acting as if people are in a space to really, really, and I'm saying this, folks, to really have a serious conversation about what's going on in this country, right? There's this view, just from this report, that they're going to proceed with, oh, they're going to, he's going to, the President Biden is going to remind the American people of the various things that the former president didn't do, and he's going to, talk about the policy of the Democrats. Let me tell y'all something, man. Nobody, if Trump is allowed, since Trump is allowed to be on the ballot, it looks like, and I haven't heard any pushback thus far, so if you have, let me know. But since Trump is allowed to be on the ballot, this is beyond policy. This is not about a policy. This is not a policy debate. This is about principle. This is about personality, folks. It's about those two things. Now, normally they don't coexist in the same time, but here's the principle. The principle part of it is you have a man that's undergone and that serves as a quote unquote danger to democracy. He's able to still run, right? So why isn't that being stopped? Okay, the personality part of it is, here's a man who don't really care about policy. His people don't care about policy as much they care about power. Okay, let's keep that point at the forefront of our minds. This is not about policy. This is about power. And so guess what? In their pursuit for power, some of the best judgments, clear arguments go out the window. I mean, what, you know what I'm saying? Like this is not about, oh, the Democrats have the better messaging on issues like infrastructure and healthcare, because they don't care. I mean, look, we're operating in a situation where you got this dude coming in and he's already working from a space of no boundaries, no respect. He doesn't follow the rules. He's already operating as outside of the realm of the civilized, quote unquote, politician. So now your approach is going to be to try to show that you are a more civilized politician when, in fact, he doesn't care. His people don't care about civilized politics. They don't care about participatory politics. They don't care about, they just want power. They want to be in charge. And part of me is like, when are we going to get to the point, to this fundamental root that this is about power? When are we going to get to that fact? All right, let me just stop it right there, because this is so frustrating for me, folks, to say the least. So frustrating. But let me bring in my sister. She's a former Democratic nominee for Florida Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. She did run for office last week. She wasn't able to win the election, but she's been very involved down in Florida doing the work that she needs to do. So I want to welcome Naomi Esther Bleemer to the conversation today as we have this discussion about Florida and President Trump. Naomi, good afternoon. How you doing, sis?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great. And it's a great honor and a privilege for me to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great honor and privilege for us to have you, sis. First and foremost, you're down in Florida. So you didn't get the win that you were hoping for, but you were able to still make some traction, make some progress, get your name out there, talk about some of the other ideas, which is really good, because it takes time to make change in the system. We understand that. So everybody is not going to be embracing, a new vision for an old system all the time so quickly. So, congratulations, at least for putting your hat in the ring and attempting to try to change the system from the inside. But here's the thing I'm having a problem with, Naomi. You're in Florida. And I'm wondering, first and foremost, President Trump announced this last night from his Mar-a-Lago residence down there. What's been the energy down there? What's been the talk around this president? Are some Floridians excited? Is this a reminiscent of what we saw back in 2016?
It is. It is exactly what we saw back then. You have a country that is divided. The same way some of us are up in arms about him announcing his run for the presidency again. There are a lot of individuals, millions of people that are excited, that are tweeting, that are Facebooking, and that are Instagram sharing their excitement about his presidency. And so this continues the divide of America. Now, you said several things when you were doing your introduction about why he should not be even qualified to actually put his name in for the presidency. Nevertheless, he did so because he could, right? And no one stopped him. So we have to move past the fact that we do not believe that at this moment, after his 4 years, that he is qualified to become our next president. We have to accept that this is what it is, and now begin to identify how are we going to mobilize, how are we going to engage, what are we going to present to our Black and brown folks to ensure that he does not become our next president.
I'm listening to you. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I'm listening to you. I hear you loud and clear. But don't you think that we need to bring this point up, that at the end of the day, this should not be allowed, right? Because it's an insult to the American people. It's an insult to the seat of power of presidency. It's an insult. So I mean, if we overlook this, if we gotta go past it and then accept it as it is what it is type of attitude, how do you reconcile that with the next generation? How do you reconcile that with the first time voter? How do you reconcile that? Because if President Trump is able to run for president, be on the ballot, then you can't beat up on the person who decides not to vote in this next presidential election. You can't say to them, well, it's your duty. It's your this is part of our history. You can't say one word to anybody that says that they're not going to vote. Because why? The hypocrisy is so blatant to allow this man on the ballot.
Listen,
so how do you reconcile that?
Listen, you're talking to a Black woman who is the first woman of color in the history of the state of Florida to file, to qualify, and to receive the nomination for Florida Commission of Agriculture, and the first Haitian American in the state of Florida to run statewide, while Haitian Americans is the second largest ethnic group in this state, and I did not receive $1 from the party. So I get it.
Wow.
I get it. But what I'm trying to get you to understand, and everyone who is tuned in right now, we have to, yes, address the fact that he should not be accepted to actually file for the seat. But then we have to move past that very quickly, because time is just passing by. And the longer we wait into the more time we spend in this space fighting why should he even be on the ballot, and not accepting the fact that he is actually on the ballot. This is our plot. This is what this generation has to face, and get moving to ensure that we bring forth something, we bring forth an agenda, so that people don't look to vote against him, but actually vote for something. And if we do not do that very quickly, we're going to lose. We're going to lose again. And listen, I feel your sentiments, and I sense your passion, and I get it. And I just went through an election less than about 8 days ago. 8 days ago, for 5 months, I went through 67 counties, 412 cities in the state of Florida. I won over 3 million votes, only to be blown out by the Republican train, if you will. And my opponent, who never came into our community, never spoke to us, never presented his policy, never presented his vision for the state of Florida, was able to win by about 1.5 million votes. This is the reality. This is exactly what we're living right now. So yes, assess, talk about, discuss the fact that we do not believe that he should have even been qualified to get on the ballot, but let's move past that very quickly, because if we do not, it is very clear that the Democratic Party does not necessarily, seeing what we just saw in midterm elections in the state of Florida, do not necessarily have a plan in place. And because they fail to plan, we're all going to lose. And so those that have a platform as you do, those that are willing to serve like myself, we have to have these great conversations as you are doing right now. And then once we're done assessing the fact that, listen, this should not be in our America, this should not be in the United States, then we need to quickly shift and say, okay, now that it is what it is, how are we going to combat this? What are we going to do in order to ensure that he does not become the next president? Because that is going to be, that is the fight. That fight began, actually, we can say that fight began last night, or we can be honest and say the fight never stopped. It never stopped. He just.
As I'm listening to you, Sister Naomi, and I appreciate you, and we got a couple of my culture crew members online who have voted for you. This is my sister, Corinna. She says she voted for you. So she's one of the 3 millions that casted her ballot for you. But since democracy is built on this idea of hope, since democracy is built on this idea that of fairness, right, quote unquote, since democracy is supposed to be built on this idea of justice, these are key principles. And look, I'm not going to be. I'm sounding the alarm on this part. But then, more importantly, I'm looking at the implications of this, Naomi. Of now, if this is allowed, if this can happen, and I know you saying that, look, we got to stop him. I'm clear that the problems in America is not because of Donald Trump. He's actually an effect of the cause. We know that. We know that. I'm clear on that. But the problem is now we're in a situation where anything goes because he's in existence as a candidate. Anything goes. So now we, as Black folks, as you mentioned, you're part of the Haitian community here in America. So we're all Black at the end of the day, right? So as for us, we're working in a situation where we're trying to come up with civilized tactics on how to address things, just like the President Biden. We're going to address this like this, but we're trying to operate in an orderly fashion in a chaotic situation. And I'm wondering, sis, is that the best move? That's the best strategy for us to take, because maybe we need to be chaotic. Maybe we need to think outside of the box. Maybe don't tell me just to vote when you got a joker who claims who positions himself as a dictator who wants to be a king. No, I'm not going to keep voting, hoping, and I call it hope and vote. That's the strategy we have, right? Hope and vote. I'm not doing that no more. No, what's the new tactic here? What's the new strategy? And I'm certainly not posing that to you as being aggressive to you. I'm just saying in general, that's the messaging that we will get from whether you're Black, whether you're part of the Haitian community, the Latino community, regardless. This hope and vote strategy. And it's like, nah, because these people they not operating from that same place.
No,
they're not moving in that same place.
I listen, I totally agree with you, and I'm definitely not with the hope and vote, right? I am someone who truly believes in empowering those that are around us in our community. I'm about informing them, educating them, and I'm also about motivating them to actually do the work. There is a work that needs to be done, and the work is going to be done by individuals such as yourself through the media. It's going to also be by us voting. It's going to also be by those that have the courage to challenge the status quo, to challenge the system that currently exists. So yes, there's multiple ways that we are going to take down this new culture I would call it, that has been created around former President Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Now, the tactics now, that's what we need to talk about. What type of tactics are we going to utilize in order to combat this? And so I totally agree with you. The hope and vote, no, we're not with that. There is work that needs to be done on the ground. There is going to be a consistent what I would say is a challenging of the falsehoods that are going to come through in the next year and a half to 2 years. There is going to be a need for those that are going to voice out and call him out and say, no, this is wrong. No, this is not what we stand for. No, this is not the America that we desire to live in. Absolutely. But then again, when it comes down to it, where the rubber meets the road, it's going to come down to the votes. And so we cannot.
It is going to come down to vote. You're right. You're right. It's going to come down to vote.
We cannot negate the vote. So now, as we're having this discussion and we're saying, oh my God, how is this possible? Why does he even still qualify to actually apply to become the president of the United States? Yes, let's have this conversation. But very quickly, once we're done with these conversations, we have to now say, okay, how do we strategize? What kind of tactics are we going to have to embrace forcefully? I agree with you, forcefully, so that we sound the alarm and every single residents within our state, our individual states, and every voter in the United States, whether Republican, Democrat, or Independent, stand up and say, no, we are not going to allow this for another 4 years.
I hate. No, Naomi, I hate you. Here's the problem.
I think a lot of people want to express what you're expressing, and let's do it.
No, but see, here's the thing. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that Black folks in particular in this country, we need to figure out something else. And we need to really figure. And that's why we're part of this community here. That's why we have these shows, and that's why we have thinkers and brilliant minds like yourself and others to come on, so we can at least dialogue to have these conversations. But I don't have all of the answers. We can go off and say, hey, we need to have a candidate on the Democratic side that speaks to the needs of Black folks and speaks to the needs of the oppressed and the marginalized community. That's certainly an option. We can go down the path of saying, well, maybe Black folks should just boycott the presidential election. You vote in every other election, but maybe we should hold our vote around the presidential election. And let me just say this: President Biden has said that he will make a decision about running for president and let folks know by early next year. His advisors and folks within his teams are saying that since Donald Trump has announced his candidacy, that's going to motivate him even more to get back in the ring, because President Biden believes that he's the only guy that can beat Trump. Now, here's the scenario with that, sis. Can you imagine if President Biden says in January of next year, hey, guys, I'm going to vote, I'm going to run for president again. So you mean to tell me we're going to have Biden-Trump part 2, and that's acceptable?
And you know what? I think this is where we now shift the conversation from, okay, how could he possibly be, how is it possible that he can actually qualify to run for the presidency? Now we shift the conversation. Now that he has, as Black and brown folks living here in America, how do we respond to that? Do we respond to that by saying, President Biden, thank you for the last 4 years. However, we Black and brown folks in America request that you actually accept that this was your time, and we find another candidate. And we
wait a minute, hold on. So we tell President Biden we thank you for your time and service, but we need a different candidate. But then we let Trump run.
No, but you have to understand, if he has already been given the legal go ahead, you can't stop. You can't stop that. Now, how do you counteract that? You understand? We can't shut down and say, oh my God, now that he got it, we're so pissed, we're so mad. And then you just throw everything away and you say, well, I'm not voting. That's not the answer. That's not.
And I respectfully ask, Sister Naomi, we may not shut down, but there has to be some level of resistance.
But resistance towards who? Towards what? Because if we don't go vote, guess what? He's going to become president. Then
that's
what?
not true. That's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. It's not a shoo-in. It's not a shoo-in. Here's the thing that I've learned about people, right? Like people, same thing that we just saw on November the 8th. People thought there was going to be this red wave, right? They kept putting out that narrative. Now that, oh my gosh, the Republicans are going to destroy the Democrats, the whole nine. And guess what happened? People voted, and that didn't materialize, right?
But I'm telling
my point in
listen, make no mistake
and
about
it. And I'm saying it in mass. Yes, in Florida, y'all operated off a different situation than in Florida.
And right now,
right.
I live in a predominantly brown and Black community in North Miami with over 60,000 residents that are majority Democrats. And in my district, my state representative is now a Republican. So this is, trust me, don't take them for granted and think that just because it didn't spill over to the entire country, that they did not do some damage. Because right now in the state of Florida, we are completely red, right? And so the reality of it is, if they are already putting their machine in motion, whether or not we agree with the leader who is presenting himself for the presidency, we have to organize ourselves and identify how are we going to respond to it. And you said something that is extremely key. Do we want President Biden running for re-election? Do we want that? And if we don't want that, how do we communicate that effectively enough to the point that if the Democratic Party decides, and President Biden decides along with them, that he is going to be the candidate, that he suffer the consequences of that? That's a different type of conversation now.
It is a different conversation.
Yeah,
it's a different conversation.
Yeah, we're not saying we're not going. We're not saying we're staying home and we're not voting and we're saying, oh, we're throwing up our hands. No, we're communicating to them. In order for you to mobilize us as a group, as a people, as a voting bloc, we want another candidate. Now, if you do not bring forth another candidate, there are going to be consequences. So it's not that the Black people stayed home and the Black people, we're not going to do that narrative. Oh, the Black people stayed home, this is why we got Donald Trump. No. We, as the Black community, requested a new candidate, and the Democratic Party failed to present that candidate. And because you failed to do that, we, the American people, got Donald Trump. That's a total different storyline. And so I hear you, and I like that idea. I don't think that just because Trump announces his run, that if we don't come out to vote, he's automatically becoming president. Something about that narrative doesn't fit right with me. No,
and I agree with you. But I agree with you. I mean, your own the governor down there, DeSantis, he got a much better chance of getting the nomination than Trump does at this point, right? He does, but you're gonna see that infighting. You're already kind of seeing some remnants, some starting scuffles between him. Even though Trump said he voted for DeSantis, that was a political move, right? Oh, I voted for DeSantis, but then he also knows I'm about to go hard in the paint against this guy, and so. But I think there's some fundamental things, and this is why I think we need to have this conversation, because there are some fundamental issues at play here that we as Black folks in this country I don't want us to get into a space of believing the okie doke. Nah, man, pull the curtains back. Let's see the situation for what it is, because we are highly intelligent, very resourceful, and more importantly, we have power, untapped power that we know that we just haven't unleashed yet as a result of us being in a hope and vote, strategy. At this point, I'm open to some new ideas. And I know what you're saying, Sister Naomi. I know you're saying, like, look, it comes down to the vote. Black folks have been in this country for over 400 years. We know what pain feels like. We know what oppression feels like. We know what marginalization feels like, right? I'm not scared if we act as if Trump coming back into office is like the Antichrist. You see what I'm saying? Like we went through slavery. You know what I'm saying? We are the most resilient people. I'm not scared. I'd rather us, fail at trying something different than live at being the same. That's the space that I'm in at this point. Let's fail. Look, if we're going to fail, we're going to go down in a blaze of glory. But guess what? You're going to remember this day. You know what I'm saying? That type of mentality versus, all right, man, I just want to keep the peace. Let's go along to get along. I'm tired of that. I'm personally tired of that, sis. I got to take a quick pause because my producer's like, look, we got to take a break, Farajii. Sis Naomi, I appreciate you, and we're not going to let you go. So we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to get some comments from our online culture crew. Stay with us, folks. We'll continue the conversation on the other side. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been chatting with my sister, Naomi Esther Bleemer, who served as the former Democratic nominee for the Florida Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. She's checking in from Florida as we talk about the big story, political story of President Trump announcing his bid to run for presidency in 2024. He made that announcement last night in Florida at his Mar-a-Lago residence and headquarters. And we've been talking to Sister Naomi about the implications of all of this. I want you to take a listen real quick of how he made this announcement. Check it out.
This will not be my campaign. This will be our campaign all together. Because the only force strong enough to defeat the massive corruption we are up against is you, the American people. It's true. The American people, the greatest people on earth. We love them all. And we love both sides. We're going to bring people together. Just as I promised in 2016, I am your voice. I am your voice. The Washington establishment wants to silence us, but we will not let them do that. What we have built together over the past 6 years is the greatest movement in history because it is not about politics. It's about our love for this great country, America, and we're not going to let it fail. I am running because I believe the world has not yet seen the true glory of what this nation can be. This is our country, our government, and the corridors of power, they're our corridors. They're not their corridors. These are our corridors. And we are coming to take those corridors back. We will make America safe again. We will make America glorious again. And we will make America great again. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what I'm thinking. So Naomi, you know what I'm thinking. Soon as that joker gets into office, if he gets into office, the conversation is going to change from the pronoun of our to the pronoun of me. We know that. We know that he's going to be on what did I call it? A revenge tour.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And you know what? Something that we should consider, as I stated earlier, number one, being able to, as Black and brown folks, make the decision, the conscious decision that current President Joe Biden may not be the best candidate to fight against former President Donald Trump. And I think the second thing that we may want to consider is the fact that not all Republicans are in agreement with him.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
And there are many Republicans that do not believe he is the best choice for them to go into a primary. And maybe the conversations need to be broadened, and we need to include Republicans as well as independents who truly believe in a just America, who truly believe in a unified America, to say, listen, we cannot allow this to happen, and actually present to Republicans the need for them to bring forth a better candidate that can compete with him in the primary. So there's obviously many different ways of looking at this. It's going to take a lot of strategy, but you know what? How far are we willing to go? Are we willing to put our differences aside and speak to our Republican brothers and sisters and say, hey, listen, he's not good for us and he's not good for you either.
Here's the only problem I have with that, Sister Naomi. Here's the problem I have with that. They don't listen to reason, and they don't listen to truth.
Well, listen.
I mean, look. Like, we had this whole year, we had 8 hearings about January the 6th. You know, this whole year, we've had multiple announcements about criminal investigations, and not just into Trump, but into his associates, Rudy Giuliani and other people. This whole year, we've had conversations about the implications of what happened on January the 6th, and the president himself, President Biden, has put it out there in major addresses talking about the attack on democracy. And you mean to tell me, after all of this, the Republicans who still stand with Trump is going to listen to black folks, or black and brown and white folks of progressive and sound mind, to make the decision to say, oh yeah, you guys are right?
No, not the ones who stand with him. The ones who are actually still sane and see his divisiveness and see his style of leadership as a breakdown of our country, the fabric of our country. So what I'm saying is, while we are communicating our strong message to say that absolutely not, we will not have him, how do we now broaden that conversation and actually lean towards independents who agree with us, Republicans who agree with us? Obviously, the Trumpers are the Trumpers. They're in a class all by themselves.
Mitch McConnell, would Mitch McConnell be in that same group? Because he just became the minority leader. He's not a quote unquote Trumper. He has quote unquote criticized Trump, but then at the same time, at one side of his mouth is criticism, another side of his mouth is complicity. So what do you? And he has influence in both.
Well, so here's the thing: we must be honest with ourselves and accept the fact that the GOP are, in some cases, much more organized and united for their cause. They are. Now the question becomes, how many of them can we actually connect with, and that we unite around a new cause, a cause that benefits all of us as Americans, and ensure that around that cause we say, okay, anything but him. And if we're not able to do that, if we're just going to go toe-to-toe with Republicans versus Democrats, and we do not have a viable candidate, I'm going to tell you right now, he's going to become president. He's going to become president because it boils down to the votes. And voting is also emotional. While we are talking about policy and, individuals who heard him today and stated that he wants paper ballots, and we are like up in arms, like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. But you know what? The people who love him, that went over their heads. They could care less.
I agree. I agree. You're right. You're absolutely right.
How do we come together, craft a message that is both policy oriented and emotionally driven as well? Because most people are making their decision on emotion that is going to resonate with everyday Americans, both black, white, Hispanic, and we rally behind that cause. Because if we cannot unite, if it's going to be us against them, he's already president. he's already president. If that is the case, there has to be a cause greater than us, greater than our individual silos, communities, cities, that we all as Americans rally behind during this election cycle, and we overturn him and his Trumpers. Outside of that, if somebody else has any other idea on how we beat him, I just don't see it.
So here's the question. And then I want to go to some of the comments from our crew. My question is, do we just stay focused on quote unquote beating Trump? Or do we, and I'm talking about Black folks, that includes the Haitian community, the Latino community. I'm talking about for those communities that have been marginalized and oppressed under this system of things. Do we really focus on Trump, or do we take this time and take it and see it as an opportunity for us to forge a new political destiny where we say, you know what, since America is on this bull, we about to break away and do something else. We gotta, and I'm sure you know, there are conversations about establishing a Black political, a more progressive political party. There are organizations and groups that are already doing that. Whether you're talking about the group that Andrew Yang and his colleagues have formed, there's a group of donors that's looking at the issue of creating, of supporting candidates that are behind the idea of cultural pluralism. I mean, there are a number of groups, and these aren't Black people. These are white people. These are Latin, Asian folks. So should we just say, you know what, let's forge a different path at this point, because we're not getting what we need to get. And my concerns, as Naomi, is if we're a part of a system that continues to slap us in the face and insult our intelligence by allowing certain things to happen, then how can I be confident that you really are going to take my interest seriously? That's the concern that I have.
I agree with you, and I understand it. I think there should be a balance. There should be a balance on how we organize our communities around our messaging, around who is leading these efforts. And I also believe there should be a strategic attack against this form of leadership and America's being an accomplice, and really turning the other way, or the other cheek, however you want to look at it. So you have to have both of them working at the same time, because at the end of the day, if we simply organize behind these new organizations and new groups that are looking to form a more inclusive style of government that leads to a president that is able to serve all of us without prejudice, and we ignore the votes that are going to be counted to elect the next president, then we're going to get Trump. So the idea is, yes, I agree to there should be a new restructuring. I agree that there should be new organized groups that arise out of this and actually push our agenda and present the policies that we actually believe in and know that it's going to work for everyone. And simultaneously, we also need to deal with this new election cycle that is already upon us. And we can't forsake one for the other. The two need to work simultaneously.
All right, let me take some quick comments. And Sister Naomi, I'm appreciating this conversation you and I have, because I think it speaks to the various sentiments that a lot of our people are watching, a lot of people have. Real Brooklyn, check it in. My guy, you said the mere fact that he is an honest liar. How about that? Never thought that that oxymoron could exist, but it exists. That he is an honest liar gives him plenty of clout to run for office. The scary part is that there are people that live next door to you that love his notification of running for the job. Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true. Lori, thank you for checking in. You said I didn't even watch it. I didn't even watch it. I had more concerns and issues more important than Trump. Well, you heard it right there, Lori. You definitely heard it. Thank you for checking in. You don't like my music. My guy, you said with great power comes no responsibility. Is that the term? I thought was something else. Says Naomi, great power comes great. Okay. I got you. You don't like my music? I feel you. I definitely feel you. Janelle, you said he's not on any ballot yet. He's only submitted paperwork that he intends to organize to run as a Republican candidate for president. True. The thing is, has there been any resistance? Have you heard any announcements, and you tell me, because I know you are researching, you deep dive into a lot of these issues. Let me know. Has any state said no? Out of the states that he tried to massage for extra votes during the last presidential election, are they going to put him on the ballot? I don't know. You check with all of those Secretary of States to figure it out. Is he going to be on the ballot in Georgia? He going to be on the ballot in Arizona? We don't know, but that's a great point. Tiana, you checked in and said we need to change the qualifications for running for president. Lord Jesus. Come on, be with us. Come on, Sister Naomi. It can't just be an age and citizenship thing. Therefore, you can run for president. Like there has to be some other things. This is, and
Well, we know there are other things. Come on, we know that there are other things. They're just not expressed, right? It's just not on paper and it's not black and white. Come on, just the average Joe is just not going to wake up and become president.
No. But I think to the American, to that point of, people see that. They don't know. They don't. And look, let's keep it real. I'm not throwing shade. Everybody didn't pay attention in American government, Naomi. You know what I'm saying? Everybody didn't. Everybody wasn't present for that lesson. So they may need to be something like, these are the things that are that makes you qualified to run for office of the presidency of the United States, right?
I agree.
So it's one of those things. Conscious thought. You said, sadly, tens of millions of people in this country do not care. Are we supposed to forget all the damage he has caused? And see, here's the thing, and I love that point, Conscious thought. Here's the thing. We're in a new space in this country around mental health and wellness, right, Naomi? I'm sure you talked about this in the work that you're doing. We're also in a new space of understanding trauma. What Trump has been able to do is create trauma. And to Conscious Thought's point, you can't just overlook that. You can't just say, that's the American way of doing things. Something traumatic happens, we talk about it, and then there is no period, there is no time for us to quote unquote grieve. There's no period, there's no time for us to reflect. We just move on to the next thing and expect people to move on. I mean, whether you're talking about mass shootings, whether you're talking about historical events that's taken place in this country, we just don't take the time to really reflect on the weight of those things. Now, I don't know about y'all, but for me, even as a Black man watching what happened on January the 6th, there was a certain level of uncertainty that came in my spirit where it was like, damn, we at this place in this country, you could just run up on the Capitol, and here's where the trauma happened. And I'm sure you heard it too. If it was Black people,
it would have been a different story.
It would have been a different outcome. It would have been a bloodbath, right? And guess what? That would have been justified because it was Black folks. So that's traumatic. The injustice brings trauma. So when you're not fair, when you're not honest, you're causing trauma. And that's a national trauma. Like, regardless of where you are on the scale, like you can't talk about hope. You can't talk about belief. And then when big ass moments of injustice occur, you don't address it to the point to relieve the psychological trauma. And you expect people to live in a space where they're not going to shoot up the place. You expect people to live in a space where they're not going to wild out on their family or abuse their family because their minds aren't right. Because why? There's national trauma, and there has been no resolution. There's been no reconciliation to the trauma of living in a country that has no sense of justice or fairness to its people. That's traumatic. As a Black man, that's traumatic for me. It's like, then what the hell am I? I'm taught to follow the rules, and then you allow a joker that don't follow the rules to become president of the United States, and I'm supposed to be cool with that? Like,
and you know what? To your point, it just highlights even more the hypocrisy of our country, and we have to accept that, right? We have to accept that the rules are not made equal for everybody. Some follow and some don't, and some choose what they'll follow, when they'll follow. And even if they don't follow and they get reprimanded, they're not reprimanded with the same level of severity. And this is the reality of where America is at. But as Black and brown folks, how do we communicate effectively what our issues are? How do we ensure that, as you stated, we literally keep up a resistance against these things? We continue to speak against them and utilize media, utilize music, utilize education, and utilize government to actually hold these people accountable. And then one step further, after we hold them accountable, produce our own candidates, produce our own leaders, produce those that are going to uphold the same standard, defend us, and not actually, fake the funk, get elected, and then just go with the flow, because that's another problem we have. You understand? A lot of our leaders are just going with the flow instead of representing the people, instead of speaking up and saying, you know what, I'm against this. I do not stand for this, and this does not represent the America that we live in. They just keep quiet. And even right now, you speak to some Democratic leaders, they'll tell you, oh, okay, yeah, you know what? Yeah, Biden shouldn't run. Yeah, I guess you're right. They're not even, they're not even standing 10 toes down to say absolutely not, because we don't believe that he can pull this off. And we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with our leaders. And then, as you stated, move forth with an agenda that is going to bring about the results that we want as a people, while maintaining our responsibility to also vote.
You are absolutely right. Sister Naomi, if you don't mind, I'd love to bring you back on, sis. I love to bring you back on. I mean, we got to have the conversation, and I respect you so much because of the time and the effort and you saying that, all right, I'm gonna do something about it. I'm gonna go run for office. That's a very, very respectful place to be. So, and even though we're having this conversation, it's so important, and I want us to keep this momentum going, because it brings about new ideas. Different perspectives produce new ideas on how to handle a situation, right? So that's the part that I enjoy. So I thank you for your time with us this afternoon. And more importantly, I thank you for your ideas and for your sacrifice to run for office and, put yourself out there and jumping from the fryer pan and getting into the fire of things. But I thank you. But I'm serious. We certainly love to bring you back on, and we hope that you accept the invitation once more.
Absolutely. And I look forward to coming back on. And to all those that were tuned in, thank you so very much. My name is Naomi Esther Blamire, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. Bye-bye. Absolutely.
Thank you, Sister Naomi. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let me get off of Trump, and let's focus our attention on another topic, which is a new survey that shows that the next generation, young adults, are now very concerned about the future of birth control access as a result of that very historic Roe v. Wade decision that was made by the Supreme Court. We'll talk about that and the implications and more. So stay with us. A lot to get to in the next discussion right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. Night.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining us. Man, oh man, if you enjoyed that first discussion that we had with Sister Naomi Esther Bleemer, you definitely don't want to miss out on checking out the replay as we talk about the implications of former President Donald Trump announcing his bid to run for presidency in 2024. Look, let me just tell y'all something, folks. I'm going to continue to have that discussion. We can't just sweep it under the rug. There's got to be something different that comes out of that. So we'll talk a little bit more about it next, over these next couple of days. I got my guy Hassan G. O'Donnell checking in tomorrow. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation because we need to have some conversations about the best way that we move forward given this expected change of events. So there it is right there. All right, but for now, I want us to focus on the conversation around the next generation and their view about the decision on Roe v. Wade, and more importantly, about birth control access. This is something that we've certainly talked about the implications of the Roe v. Wade decision on women, but what about young men and young women? So there was a new survey that was put out to look at this situation. And I'm so happy that we are going to be joined. We're joined by a special guest to talk to us a little bit more about why young adults are concerned about the future of birth control. Our special guest is the CEO, is Reagan McDonald Mosley, who is the CEO and Senior Director of Research, to talk to us about the work of Power to Decide. This is a nonprofit organization that is spearheading an outreach campaign to shine a light on the facts and dispel any misconceptions about the issue of birth control access and how we move forward in that conversation. So we want to welcome to the airwaves of The Culture here on the Black Star Network, Reagan McDonald Mosley. Hi, Reagan. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for having me here on our 10th annual Thanks Birth Control Day campaign.
Oh, awesome. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. And again, we appreciate you. This is a crazy news story day. So we appreciate your patience for joining us to have this conversation. Reagan, let's first talk about the work of the nonprofit organization Power to Decide. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the survey. But what does Power to Decide? What is that work all about?
Yeah, Power to Decide is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We work to improve access to sexual and reproductive health information and resources. Our mission is to advance sexual and reproductive well-being for all, and we accomplish this largely by providing trusted information through our online sites and digital tools like bedsider.org and abortionfinder.org. We also work by expanding access to quality services and catalyzing culture change, including doing our annual Thanks Birth Control campaign.
So this Power to Decide has been on this issue. And I'm glad that y'all put out this survey and got some results from this survey, because when you first heard about this decision around, the abortion issue, this decision coming from the Supreme Court, what was your initial reaction to that decision? And then how did Power to Decide decided on moving forward and trying to get more data and more understanding about the implications on that decision on the next generation?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I was devastated. I'm a doctor, I'm an obstetrician gynecologist, and I've been providing care to communities with a lot of barriers to access to comprehensive reproductive health services for almost 20 years now. And I, have been preparing for this moment. Those of us working in this space knew that the Supreme Court had taken up that case, and they wouldn't have taken it up if they didn't want to make a different decision than they had made in the past. And yet the scientist and the public health expert in me didn't think that they were going to overturn the protections in Roe v. Wade. So I was devastated and thinking about, people in my community and people across the country who are going to have a really hard time accessing essential healthcare services afterwards. We here at Power to Decide have been using all of our resources, including our websites, to get the word out about how people can access sexual health information, contraception, and abortion care. And that's in part why we did this survey, to find out, what people are thinking and what they're doing in light of this critical decision.
So what were some of the key takeaways of your survey, Reagan?
Yeah, so number one, we found that people are worried, as you stated. People are super worried about access to contraception. They saw that the Supreme Court can take away essential rights that have been enshrined in our society for decades on end. And they're now worried that the same thing can happen to contraception. So our survey found that 50% of young adults between 18 to 29 believe birth control will become harder to access in the future. And actually that number was much higher. It was 57%. People thought that it would be harder because of the Supreme Court decision that took away abortion rights. And this is a dramatic shift from only 27% of people who think that birth control is currently difficult to get, showing that people are really concerned that in the future, laws may change in specific states, making it harder for them to access contraception.
And when we say young people, what age range are we talking here?
So in this survey, it was 18 to 29-year-olds.
And is that the age, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is this the same age of people who are deciding to use, like I've seen a couple of different things that more young people are becoming, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they are making these choices very early on versus later on in life, from choices about having children. I think I read one study where it said that the next generation, I'm speaking of 18, 19, 21-year-olds and whatnot, they have already decided that they weren't going to have children for a number of reasons. We're also seeing that, contrary to what some people believe, that they're even having less sex than previous generations. Is that information correct?
That is exactly right. People are, in general, having sex later or initiating sex later. And people are having less children, more people are using birth control. And that's good. That means that, people are able to make important decisions about when and whether to have children or to have another child. Yeah. That being said, we still know that there are significant barriers that many people face to accessing essential healthcare services like contraception. We've done research that shows that more than 19 million women struggling to make ends meet live in contraceptive deserts where they don't have reasonable access to the full range of birth control methods. So while we have made significant progress, there's still so much to do.
Contraception deserts.
That's right. So imagine that in a specific county, there are a certain number of women of reproductive age. And then imagine in that same county, there aren't enough providers that offer the full scope of contraceptive methods to serve that number of women who have lower incomes. Those are our definition of contraceptive deserts. And again, we found that large numbers of women in the United States live in these areas without reasonable access to contraception.
And talk to us about the impact of this on Black and Brown communities for those young people in that age group.
Right, exactly. So just as with other healthcare topics, folks who are in Black and Brown communities and folks with lower incomes have significant systemic barriers to access to the healthcare system and to the contraceptive methods that they need. And so all of the things that we're talking about, access to contraception, access to abortion, access to health information, disproportionately impact Black and Brown people and people with lower incomes. And that's why it's critically important that we're talking about these issues in our community and talking about the importance of contraception and birth control and not considering these stigmatized topics that we shouldn't be talking about.
Right. And from your perspective, you are a medical professional. When do you have these conversations? I mean, do you have it when you talk to your son, your daughter, niece, nephew, grandson, granddaughter? Do you have these conversations when you talk about sex? or do you have that conversation at another period, at another point?
I'm so glad you asked that. Talking is power. So the earlier, the better. And the reality is there are age appropriate things that we can be saying along the way, right? So obviously you're not going to talk to someone until they're ready about sex, but you might talk to them about their body parts so that they know the correct anatomical name for their body parts. And that's also important so they can tell you if someone's touching them inappropriately. So at a very young age, you can start talking about anatomy. You can start talking about good touch, bad touch. At then a later age, then you can start to introduce topics around sex, contraception, healthy relationships, gender identity, sexuality, etc. But every child is different, every family is different. But the important thing is to be the trusted adult for the young people in your life, so that they know when they have questions. You don't want them going to their friends or people who aren't informed about these issues. You want them coming to you, and so you can give them this information. And if you didn't get that information from your parents, as many of us didn't, you can come to Power to Decide, our website, where we have a lot of resources for how to talk to your young people in your life about these issues. It's critically important. You want to inform them so that they can make healthy decisions and decide if, when, and under what circumstances to become a parent.
Let's get to a couple of comments from our online culture crew, Doc, and get some thoughts from them. Hotep Pan Africa, you checked in. Good to hear from you. You said birth control is necessary, but we must teach our children to respect themselves and their bodies. They are bartering their bodies for love. It is dangerous and unsustainable. Our girls suffer the most. So I think Hotep brings up an excellent point, because the culture right now is a culture where it's very, and I call it transactional, right? Where especially from both men and women, a man says, "Okay, I'm going to pay to be with you," and a woman says, "Okay, you will have to pay to be with me in some way, shape, or form," right? And there is that bargaining conversation that happens between young men and young women that is often emphasized by music or by the culture that we're living in. And so I'm wondering, how do you penetrate through that? How do you get this message of understanding your body? How do you get through the message of the importance of having access to birth control in the midst of a culture such as this?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that. And I think the reality is that people are nervous that if they talk about sex, if they talk about contraception, if they talk about these subjects with young people, that will encourage them to engage in sex. And that's actually not true. And research has shown the opposite, that abstinence-only education leads to people having sex earlier. And it contributes to situations where people are having sex without the important information about how to protect themselves, what a healthy relationship is, how to negotiate condom use, what are the emotional impacts of sex, right? If you're not even talking about sex, you don't even get to talk about that in-depth topic with, your parent or the champion in your life. And so that's why it's important for us to have these courageous conversations with young people, even if it can be awkward. And there are lots of really ways that you can do that don't feel difficult or hard. For example, as you stated, we live in a very sexualized culture, right? And so if you watch a TV show where young people are having sex, you could turn to the young person afterwards and say, what did you think about that depiction of sex? Did you see them using a condom? Is that an example of a healthy relationship? Is that a relationship that you would like to be in? And so these conversations don't have to be contrived. They don't have to be difficult. But the point is that you become a trusted resource that they know that they can come to you if they themselves have a concern, their friends have a concern, or they need help or advice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go to Iromo Anderson. Iromo, you said contraception deserts. Holy crap. Is that?
Yeah, I mean,
so I've heard of the food desert. I've heard of the news desert. Now we have a contraception desert.
Yes, absolutely. And if you want to see if you live in a contraceptive desert, you can go to our website, powertodecide.org, and look at the contraceptive desert maps that shows you where these areas are. And of course, you won't be surprised to learn that there are many contraceptive deserts in the same places that have now banned or completely restricted access to abortion. So we've made it harder for people to protect themselves from a pregnancy if they're not ready to be a parent or not ready to parent again. And then we've also made it really difficult for them to access abortion care. And this is all unconscionable, right? Like, we live in a very well-resourced nation. We should be focusing on improving everyone's reproductive well-being and making services like contraception, abortion, and information about sexual health available to everyone. But the reality is right now in our country, someone's access to these essential health services largely depends on where they live and what their income is. Because we know that people who have the means are always going to be able to leave the state or find a provider that can give them the care that they need or want.
Absolutely. Moet 131, you said unpopular opinion, but if you're broke with no access to contraception, you shouldn't be having sex.
So, counterpoint, does that mean that people with lower incomes shouldn't be having sex and shouldn't be having children? And we know that the people in this country, because of systemic racism, who are people with lower income are more likely to be Black. So are we then saying that Black people should not have children at the same rates as others? Rather than saying that, what about we imagine a world where everyone had the resources available to them to live their best lives, to have a job that allows them to have adequate pay, to care for the children that they have and the number of children that they want to have, whether that's 0, 1, or 5, right? Or 9. I'm the youngest of 9 children, right? Some people want to have large families, some don't. And we shouldn't be making judgments about who should procreate and be able to have kids. But what we should be doing is implementing policies that make sense so that people can take care of themselves and their family and have the number of children that they want to have.
So do you think that, and it speaks to, I mean, we're also in an era of Nick Cannon, right? Like he has 12 children now, and I'm sure that there aren't a lot of Black men with 12 children running around. But I have heard of some brothers who have 8, 9, 10 children, right? But the conversation that I often have is, one, are you going to be actually available to be there for their upbringing? Okay, so we can talk about that. But the bigger conversation is, does that show some level of irresponsibility when it comes to sex, contraception, and birth control? That are we giving license to that type of behavior? Not to say you can't have children, but one of the things that I'm convinced of, Doc, is family planning, which is a science, is not something that we often talk about in the Black community, right? Like we can say, oh, go to Planned Parenthood, go to this group, go to that group. Power to Decide is deciding, offering these resources. You can say that. But I think there needs to be different conversation around family planning. Now, look, when I was in school, when you're talking about, I grew up in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. So at that time, there was no conversation about family planning. There wasn't like, okay, it just didn't happen. Prior to me going to the school, the generation before me, the baby boomers and all of that, they had a little bit more. Now there seems to be no discussion about family planning. Matter of fact, the quote unquote nuclear family has been completely changed, where people, young women are deciding to have babies with choosing not to have fathers in their lives, right? Like, just give me the baby and thank you for your service. That you know what I mean? That type of thing. And we have all of these like ongoing dynamics around. And I'm wondering, are we taking this thing seriously? Because at the end of the day, you're still talking about bringing human beings into the world that you are responsible to and and responsible and accounted for. So
yeah.
How do we make sense of that?
No, I'm so glad that you brought that up, right? Because these conversations are critically important to have in our community. Oftentimes, we have sort of taken the premise or the assertion that, like, it's up to God, right? It's up to religion. It's not of my doing. If I have a child, I have a child. If I don't, I don't. And the reality is, a lot of people are unclear or unsure about whether or not they want to have a child, or they do feel like that there's a religious component to whether or not it happens to them. And so it's important for us to talk about these topics so people understand that there are things that they can do to plan for when and if to have a child. And there are resources available to them. And then it's upon us, organizations like Power to Decide, to make sure that the policies, both at the highest level, at the community level, at our health institutions, are aligned for people to have quality reproductive health services in their own community in a way that's culturally accessible to them. And it's really important, the work that you're doing, just to lift these conversations up with our community to say like, hey, this is an important issue. What more important decision will you make in your life outside of, when you're going to have a child and how to raise them, how many children you want to have and how many you can care for. So have those conversations with your partner, have those conversations with yourself, and then plan around them.
I'm gonna throw out an idea, Doc, and you tell me if this is too far-fetched or if we're at this point in this country considering everything else. Do you think that there should be a law where you are limited to how many children you can have in this country?
No, I think exactly the opposite, right? That our policies and our systems should be designed to make sure that everyone has access to high quality information about their bodies, high quality services such as contraception, and high quality abortion services if they end up having a pregnancy at a time that doesn't work for them. And we should have, systemic sex ed that is customized and high quality and evidence-based for everyone. And if we put our resources into that, rather than restricting policies, right, that sort of restrict access to abortion or restrict the number of children that someone could have, if we create this reproductive health utopia, people will make really smart decisions to take care of themselves.
Absolutely. Reagan, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to continue to take some comments from our online culture crew, continue the conversation. Folks, we've been talking to Reagan McDonald Mosley, who is a doctor, and she is the CEO of Power to Decide, a nonprofit organization that recently did a survey that says that young people are concerned about the future of birth control in this country. We'll continue that conversation. We'll get to your thoughts and a whole lot more. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys. This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff.
So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been having a great informative conversation with the CEO of Power to Decide, a nonprofit organization that focuses on birth control access and health and the importance of it. And we've been talking about a new survey that they have researched that shows that young people are concerned about the future of birth control. We've been talking to the CEO, Reagan McDonald Mosley, who's a doctor, to talk to us about this survey and about reproductive health and wellness. So we appreciate Reagan for being with us this afternoon. Reagan, thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to join us for this conversation, which is much needed, right? Like you've been saying it throughout this discussion that we're not having enough conversations about this. And this leads me to one of my online culture crew members, my sister, Karen Connor. Karen had posted this in our chat saying that outreach conversations about making better choices is necessary. Irresponsible adultery and hookup sex can result in unwanted pregnancies. It's not judgment, it is common sense.
That's right. And that's exactly why our work is so important, to make sure that people have access to the tools that they need readily available to them in their own community. One of the things that we found and that the CDC has reported is that actually sexually transmitted infections have increased over the course of the pandemic, right? Netflix and chill culture was still happening, and yet health centers were closed and people were scared to go into health centers during the pandemic. So get yourself tested if anyone is concerned.
If you Netflix and chill too long, you saying get tested. Is that what you're telling me, Doc?
But that's right. The reality is that we have a lot of challenges around sexual and reproductive health. In not having the conversation that we're having today is part of the problem, right? People aren't having these conversations in their own communities, with their parents, with their providers, because there's so much stigma. And then what happens is that people end up having sex without protection, or not feeling informed enough or courageous enough to get the care that they need, which then can lead to, pregnancies when people aren't ready to take care of them, sexually transmitted infections, and other concerns. So that's why campaigns like Thanks Birth Control are important, to just break down that stigma and normalize conversations around access to sexual and reproductive health. It doesn't always have to be discussed in a negative manner or negative light, right? It can be a positive thing. It can be something that allows you to finish school, right, before having another child or before having a child. It might allow you to get that promotion, before you're ready to have another child. It might be an opportunity for you to have a really great sex life with someone without having to worry about getting pregnant before you're ready. And so we don't always have to talk about sexual and reproductive health in a negative light, which I think is part of what we tend to do in our community. So talking about these things in a positive light can reach more young people who oftentimes get turned off when it's a don't do this, don't do that kind of conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go back to our online culture crew. Corinna, my sister, Corinna always got something strong to say. She said, what Nick Cannon is doing is grotesque in my view, and the women have no sense of self-worth, posing and grinning in the pictures. What's the message that you think, Doctor, that sends to young women, right? That you do have a man who, He's moving around. He's making the rounds, and then you have these women in these pictures like holding their baby, and they're like, and does that send the wrong message?
I mean, I think it just goes to your point that you said earlier that, like, yes, having enough financial resources to take care of a child is important, but it's more than just that. Like parenting.
I'm about to say, because Nick Cannon ain't that paid.
To be a deliberate parent, you have to be present and you have to be available, and you have to guide and mentor and do all those things. And it takes a great deal of effort and energy. And so it's critically important that we allow people to have access to the resources to be able to plan and space their pregnancies appropriately when they want to. A couple of other really interesting things from our survey to note. One is that there are pervasive misconceptions about contraception. And in fact, our survey found that almost 70% of people think that emergency contraception can end a pregnancy in its early stages, which is just not true and has not been backed by science or evidence at all. Emergency contraception prevents pregnancy. Medication abortion, which is also safe and effective, can end an early pregnancy. So that's something else really important to point out.
Excellent point. You don't like my music, you checked in and said it's also a good reason to make birth control available and affordable. I remember growing up that used to be like birth control. You had to kind of go back into the back room. You know what I'm saying? And it's like
stigmatized. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you going into the back of a cave or something.
Yeah.
You got any birth control? And it's like this very hush conversation. It's not that anymore, right? The culture is much more like when you're buying condoms. Years ago, you would be like, "Can I get a condom?" And it's like go get the condoms in aisle 4 next to. And I'm like, why do we stigmatize people who want to have protected sex?
Exactly.
We damn sure don't stigmatize people who have unprotected sex.
Yep.
Right. So I never understood that.
Yeah. Safe and sexy.
Yeah.
But we have a long way to go because again, this is still very stigmatized, especially in Black and Brown communities, to talk about these things. And that's why the work that we're doing to have a Thanks Birth Control Day where we're shouting out on social media and posting videos and seeing millions of people talk about using birth control and what it means to them, that's critically important to break down that stigma. For someone just out there to say oh, it's okay to talk about these things. I don't have to be embarrassed about it. Right. No, you should be talking about these things because otherwise, if you're not talking about them or you don't know where to access contraception or how, that's going to lead to bad health outcomes, right? So really important. Your commenter is right. We should make it accessible and affordable. So one thing for people to know, your listeners to know, is that the FDA may soon approve a birth control pill to be available over the counter, meaning that you could go into any pharmacy and get it like you do Tylenol or medication for allergies or other things that are available over the counter. So that's a huge advancement for sexual and reproductive health. Actually, they were supposed to have a discussion about bringing a birth control pills over the counter this week, but that has been delayed for 3 months. But hopefully that will be something that we see sometime next year.
Absolutely. So, as in the final few moments that we have together, Doc, I want to get your take on this whole idea of politicizing our choices, right? Politicizing the body, because that's been a huge part of this abortion conversation that women don't feel they feel, a lot of women say they don't feel like they have agency over their bodies, that their body is dictated or determined by older white men or just men in general. And I'm wondering, with the survey that you guys did, how did that translate to the next generation? Is there some pushback against this idea of politicizing our choices, our sexual choices? Is there some pushback around that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the most recent elections has shown that people are really scared and willing to sort of go to the polls and use their vote to push back against this. And, as a doctor, as a provider, I can tell you, right, that these situations should not be politicized because everyone's situation is different. And we shouldn't judge, the decisions that someone makes. It really should be between that person and their provider and whoever's important to them. That might be a religious leader, that might be their partner, that might be their mother, that might be their sister. But they should be able to make important decisions about their sexual and reproductive health and other healthcare decisions without a politician in the room, whether that's abortion access or care for transgendered youth or other services.
Yeah. What does that look like as we're talking about moving forward? How do we change that?
So number one is participating in Thanks Birth Control Day and shouting out why these issues are important for our community specifically, because we know our community will be uniquely impacted by laws that restrict access to sexual and reproductive health services. Another thing is to ask the Senate to pass bills like the Right to Contraception Act that would support contraceptive access and prevent, something like what happened with the Supreme Court and taking away abortion rights. It would prevent that from happening to contraception and contraceptive rights. And then it's just taking care of ourselves and our community. Identify a young person in your community and have that tough conversation with them to say, like, do you know that having sex can have consequences, and there are really important things that you can do to protect yourself, and here's where to go, and do you need help? Do you need a visit? Can I help you with that? And again, if you need resources, come to our website, powertodecide.org. And we have suggestions for how to talk to young people in your community or your young people about these issues. And check out our resource, bedsider.org, that has tons of information on contraception, sexual health topics. It even has a clinic finder, so you can locate a provider in your community that provides contraceptive services. And we have a contraceptive access fund. So if you're someone with a lower income who's having trouble accessing contraception, we can provide you with a year's worth of contraception through one of our telehealth providers.
That is awesome. I want to show folks in Keenan and Ariel, if we can pull up the website, powertodecide.org, folks, is the website. There it is. Boom, Doc. Look at that. Look at all your work you guys are doing, talking about, and I'm on the website here on my laptop as well. Beautiful website, talking about, Keenan, let's see if we can scroll to there. It is Thanks Birth Control Day. I think that's pretty interesting. Talk to us a little bit about that event, Doc.
Yeah, so this is our 10th year of this huge campaign. It's an award-winning social media campaign. And it's, much of the conversation we've been having today, like, let's normalize conversations around sexual and reproductive health and contraception. For far too long, these conversations have been stigmatized, have been behind closed doors. We've been hiding from them, and that has served no one. So we're finding a new way to do it and shouting loud and proud all of the amazing things that birth control has done for people and society, allowing women to fully participate in society, allowing people to stay in school and be financially secure and take care of their family members. So it's a really exciting campaign, and we're so grateful that you're bringing this topic to your listeners, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
We would love to have you. We would love to have you. Dr. Reagan McDonald Mosley, we appreciate you. She serves as the CEO of Power to Decide. If you want to get more information about the great work that they're doing, check out their website at powertodecide.org. Take a look at that there, folks. Powertodecide.org. And you can learn more about the work they're doing with the next generation around reproductive health, birth control, and so much more, and how it's essentially how young people can have agency over their own body and choices. There it is right there. Dr. Reagan McDonald Mosley, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for being so good for the culture.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks, we're going to take another quick pause. When we come back, final conversation, is Nas relevant? This is a question that was posed in a Clubhouse room chat as a result of, an album that he just recently dropped, King Disease 3. But it also is a question that was brought up where 21st century hip hop artist 21 Savage responded. I'm going to show you what his response was. And it leads me to ask, where do we put our veterans of the culture as they continue to put out music, but they're also battling what many call staying relevant? So we'll have that conversation. So stay with us. It's the culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture. We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Okay, for our final conversation, I was just, scrolling through social media, and this discussion about hip hop came up. And since we are the culture, I figured, hey, let me bring this forth to you to get your take on this. And big shout out to my online culture crew, because they know that they can jump into these conversations early. So some of them have already expressed some disdain with even posing the question, as we talk about hip hop, and most importantly, talking about the certain individuals and their impact on our culture. Now, let me just give you some context as to why we're even asking this question. Is Nas relevant? This question is not just about Nas, the hip hop artist, but I also believe it's also about Nas, who represents an older form of hip hop artists and their music, right? Nas is who's been on the scene for, can we say, like damn near 30 years, right? And from his first album, his classic album, Illmatic, to all the way up to this album, King's Disease III, or King's Disease 3. His career is unmatched in terms of longevity. His career, his music is going to be around forever. He has, a bunch of accolades, and most importantly, he always has constantly consistent in his message around everything from Black power to economic development. to making sure that the culture and the integrity of the culture stays intact. But this conversation comes out of a Clubhouse discussion. You know the platform, Clubhouse. It comes out of a platform, the Clubhouse, where over the weekend, while part of this Clubhouse room, where he discussed, where there was a discussion about his latest record collaboration with producer Hit Boy, King's Disease 3 was being discussed. 21 Savage jumped into the conversation. 21 Savage, a new school hip hop artist. You know, he has gotten his rise to fame has been trap music. He has now collaborated with Drake on their on their first project, Her Loss, which has gone a lot of controversy for various reasons. But 21 Savage made this comment while a part of the Clubhouse chat discussion. He said, quote, "I don't feel like Nas is relevant. I just feel like he got a loyal fan base. He still makes good ass music." Now, people were mad with 21 Savage, right? People are saying, what do you mean Nas isn't relevant? Nas is, oh my gosh, he's been around longer than you've been alive. You know what I mean? Like, he's been doing this for a very, very long time. And 21 Savage said, look, I'm not throwing shade on the dude. That's my guy. I got nothing but love and respect for Nas and those who are in the same class with him. But he's just simply saying that when we're talking about being connected to the culture, when we're talking about things that are happening in the culture, do we bring up Nas? I don't know. I don't know, dude, if we want to use that term relevant, because I think this is part of why I think the culture is the way it is. And y'all tell me in the final few moments of today's show, because we're always trying to trend. We're always trying to be relevant instead of focusing on being right, instead of focusing on being good. We're always just trying to have somebody talk about us, right? There's always that point. And I think that if we look at where we are in hip hop, we have gone through so many phases. If you are a student of hip hop, if you are a lover of hip hop music, I'm a student, I'm a lover. I grew up on hip hop music. You know, I still listen to hip hop music. I actually listen to a lot of different artists, but I have my favorites. Nas is one of my favorites. Lupe, Drake, I like some of his stuff. Jay, you know, I love Common. And that, I mean, you have your favorites, but that's what hip hop is. It's an evolution of our experience. It's an evolution of sound. There are so many people that have been involved in hip hop music and hip hop culture to make the culture what it is, and to make the music sound the way it does, to make the music make the impact that it has made. But going back to my original premise, is Nas relevant? Is he relevant where we're always talking about him, say, versus his counterpart Jay-Z, where you may not hear about Nas's philanthropic givings. You may not hear about Nas, doing some sort of work in the community. But does that take away from the fact of he has still made an impact? No, it doesn't. You know, I think to 21 Savage's point of he has a fan base, absolutely. Absolutely. But the question I think that we as consumers of the culture must ask ourselves is, do we always need to be relevant? That's the question I would ask. Why do we always need to be relevant? Why do we always need for people to talk about us? Why do we always need to be quote unquote trending or go viral? There's something about that is just seems kind of interesting to me. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. So post your comments in our in the chat on YouTube, Facebook, and we'll we'll definitely talk about it. Hotep, you checked in and said Nas's messaging and his collaboration with Damian Marley will always be relevant, hands down. Let me tell you something. Let me pull this up real quick, because Hotep, you saying something here, brother. They have that song Patience, but the album was called Distant Relative. If y'all never heard this album, it is one of Nas's best albums, in my opinion. Distant Relative. See, Nas is like, you know how we listen to scholars Like we have a Dr. Gerald Horn, we've had Dr. Carr. You know, we have these Black scholars in our community, right? And you may not always hear about them, but when they do open their mouths, something significant is going to come out. Something worth listening to is going to come out. Something worth considering is going to come out. That's how I feel about Nas. That's how I feel about Nas. Like that's the gap. You can't talk about hip hop music without having that scholarly understanding about things. All right, let's go back to hearing from you. Make sure y'all post your comments as we talk about this, folks, because that's important. That's important. I think that if nothing else, hip hop music is going through a change now. And I don't know how many of you actually remember, or may have heard, not remember, but just heard another hip hop artist, Lil Baby, not Da Baby, Lil Baby. Some folks have told me that, and I've listened to a couple of his songs. You know, I'm not a full-blown fan, but I like what he brings to the game. That he decided not to use curse words in his music. And I got to see how old my little brother is. He also making ways for, and this little brother, Lil Baby, 27 years old, has a huge following on social media. His music is well accepted. He's collaborated with a number of major artists, right? And he continues, he just got I know a few weeks ago, he got an award for his community service. Every year he hosts, I know some artists do this, but he really does give everything from turkeys to laptops away in his native homeland of Atlanta, Georgia. You know, you're talking about how do we groom artists to think socially, to be socially responsible, right? How do we make sure that our artists are there? And I think that is one of the things that's going to move this culture forward. If we see more artists who are seriously thinking about using their platform to bring some level of edification to our consciousness, right? You think about artists who are seriously thinking about the impact of their words. That's what moves the culture forward. That's what moves the cultures forward. All right, let's go back to what you got to say. CTS Fang, you said 21 Savage is a fast faction. Nas is haute couture. I like that. I like it. I like it. I like it. I thought you were going to say 21 Savage is fast food. Nas is like a steak dinner. Love it. I appreciate you. Thank you for checking in. Marcus the Great, you say 21 is right. Nas isn't relevant. He's a dinosaur. No disrespect. Hip hop itself is relevancy. Are you a dinosaur when you still putting out music? Like what makes you a dinosaur? I'm curious now, Marcus. Because when has Jay-Z put out an album? A recent Jay-Z. Jay-Z. He's been featured on other people's albums. When the last time he put out new music? This is 22. You know what I'm saying? Now he's featured everywhere. Of course, God did, and he got all this other stuff, right? So is he a dinosaur as well, or is it just because he just jumps on a hot track on he connects with a future artist? I don't know. But I wouldn't say Nas is a dinosaur. I think Nas appeals to a certain demographic of the culture, of the music. Like everyone. Like I can't listen to trap rappers. I'm going to be honest with y'all, folks. That's not my reality. I don't even want to, like it's one thing to talk about your upbringing. It's another thing to glorify madness. And that's the problem that I have, right? Like I can't relate to that. I can't relate to being on the street, transporting packs and you know what I mean? And that is beyond my reality. I don't want to even think about that at the age that I'm in, at the mental and emotional and spiritual place that I'm in. I don't need to think about that. So I think hip hop is one of those genres where if you are in a certain place in your life, there's a space for that. That's the beauty of hip hop music. That's the beauty of hip hop culture. It's like a smorgasbord that you can just be like, all right, I'm in this place. I often hear women say, and these are women that are professionals who are conscious, and they listen to everyone from Glorilla, Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B. And when you talk to them sisters who are professional, brilliant, you know what I'm saying? They might be they conscious, they for the people, they for the struggle, they are part of the conversation, but they listen to these sisters and they will say, yeah, when I'm in a certain mood, I like to listen to certain songs. And I get that. I respect that. I understand that. So I'm not sure, Marcus, if that's something that we need to change or not from your perspective, but it's interesting. Caramel Kisses. You said Nas will always be relevant and Nas should always be brought up because he's a trailblazer. Right. But again, Nas to me represents veteran hip hop artists, but you're right. He's always going to be relevant if you listen to the music. If you listen to the music. See, the thing is that once you get older, and I know, so I'm sure Nas understands this, and like some of the older, icons of the culture, they understand this. Like this moment that we find ourselves in, the way that you kind of keep things moving is that you got to be involved in a lot of controversy. If you're living a good life, if you're living a clean life, if you're trying to live a righteous life, and you just want to produce music, you want to get people to dance a little bit, to think more, and all of those things, you're not going to be talked about. And therefore, you're not going to be seen as relevant. Right? Even if you're doing good deeds, you're not going to be seen as relevant. Because the culture, here's the part about it, folks. The culture feeds off of foolishness. Some of the parts of the culture, especially when it comes to music, arts, and entertainment, it feeds off of gossip. It feeds off of, a bunch of just stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like for example, that couple. Now, I don't keep up with them, but Nira tells me about them. Other people, I've seen other people post Blueface and Krishan. Yo, I don't know. I don't know who they are. Blueface apparently got arrested in Las Vegas a couple of days ago. You know what I'm saying? But they be posting these wild ass videos of Krishan throwing up and they partying. I mean, and people say, oh, they're relevant. Relevant to what? Relevant to who? I mean, relevant in what respect? And I think that as part of the culture, since we make up the culture, we are the culture. We gotta. I'm not saying that you start censoring people, canceling people, and all of those things, but we do have to ask those questions as to what part of the culture we want to elevate and what part of the culture we just want to kind of leave on its own. Because since we are the culture, we dictate what's hot and what's not. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Caramel Kisses, appreciate you. Couple reasons. You say that's like saying Big Daddy Kane or Pete Rock and Cielo Smooth is irrelevant, or Keith Sweat and New Edition is irrelevant. They are pioneers. Give them their flowers. I think so too. I think so too. You know what? I was listening. How many people still listen to Usher? Just out of curiosity, I wonder if y'all tune into Usher. We don't talk about Usher like we used to talk about. Remember when Usher used to? I mean, he was played everywhere. He was that guy. He was R&B king, right? Like, boom, Usher. Now he makes that, like I say, that smooth R&B. You know what I mean? I mean, he can get ratchet. He could jump on the track with like a Summer Walker or some other artists and stuff like that. But that's not his wheelhouse no more. He grown up. You understand what I'm saying? He's a different man now. He got a family. He got to deal. He got real man stuff. He's not the same Usher. So I think that's interesting. Thank you, couple reasons. The remixtress, you said somebody that released their first album 30 years ago and is still able to have a fan base is proof of relevance and a significant one at that. Facts. I agree. We can say relevant or we can say longevity. Relevance means that you are in a certain, you are significant during a certain time period. Well, there are forces within our culture that I think keeps us from hearing significant voices. Nas and others can be more relevant if we decide to listen to them instead of the forces that keeps us from listening to them. They could be relevant, but if you're seeking as a hip hop consumer, as a hip hop fan, if you're seeking music that is going to uplift, now Nas talked about all the street stuff, you know what I'm saying? But at this point in his life, he's at a different place. So if you're at a different place, he's going to be relevant for your growth and development. When I listen to King Disease 1 and 2, I could bang with that. King Disease 2 had Lauryn Hill on there, you know, and they had a track, I forgot the name of that song. But when him and Lauryn Hill came together on that track, y'all remember that fire track? Man, it felt like a breeze. It felt like a breath of fresh air when they came together. He was talking about life, you know what I'm saying? Talking about growing up, seeing life from a different perspective, kind of losing yourself in nature. Lauryn Hill came out. She addressed her lateness issue. I mean, y'all remember that song? Boom, took the industry apart, just blew the industry away. Lauryn Hill, she's one that we could also include in the conversation, right? Can we say that, is she relevant? So I think that it depends. It depends on who you are. Karen, you checked in and said Nas is one of the most feared and respected men in the industry. I can believe that. I can believe that. Yo, let's not forget the fact that Nas had one of the most historic beefs with Jay-Z, and in some cases won, because he dropped Ether. If y'all don't know nothing about that Ether beef, Ether takeover beef, which actually, if y'all y'all remember this, that beef came sometime after the whole East Coast, West Coast thing, and people thought that beef of Jay-Z and Nas was going to lead to violence, and it didn't. It actually led to two black men seeing their power in the industry and power in the culture, where they redefined what beef was. Because nobody wanted two titans at that time to go to war, go to blow for blow, you know, because of some words on the track. I mean, they went hard on each other too. Jay-Z talked about Nas's baby mother. Nas talked about this, and then Ether dropped, and just crazy, crazy. Gerald, you said the culture is whack, focusing on drill, 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 murder, murder, kill, kill. Women in this era of so-called hip hop are all strippers, and I don't want to use that word, so I'm not going to say it. Yeah, it is whack for that. But guess what? You know how we can change that? Don't buy it. Don't consume it. Now, the thing is, if you decide to consume it, if you decide to buy it, because, okay, Gerald, you might think that, but somebody in your family, I bet you, without a shadow of doubt, believe that is the music. They're going to hold on to that music. They're going to hold on to that music. And we got to teach the next generation. Hell, we probably got to teach some adults as to the impact, the psychological impact of it, the cultural impact of it. If we're always in a mindset to murder, murder, kill, kill, slap a chick, you know, get money, go to the strip club, make it rain. We got to talk about that. We got to talk about it. Real Brooklyn, you checked in. Gerald, appreciate you. Real Brooklyn, you said record companies dictate what they put out. Nas stayed true to what he was about. What, you rapping now, Real Brooklyn? Record companies dictate what they put out. Nas stayed true to what he was about. All right, I know. I got you. I know Real Brooklyn. I know you got bars, but you know what? You make a lot of sense. And that's the other part of the conversation. We don't see that other part of the discussion, right? That a lot of these artists want to grow, evolve their message. I remember hearing Snoop Dogg one time talking about that, talking about the conflict that he would have with his record company. And I remember LL saying something like that when you are in the boardrooms, when you are in those business offices and you are a grown ass man, you got a family, you know what I'm saying? You've grown past, you moved out the hood, you know what I'm saying? You on to some business and other stuff. And the record company wants you to always remind the people about your days in the struggle, growing up, your days when you were selling drugs, and when your days in a hallway and all that BS. The record companies put that out there. They want you to keep putting that narrative out there to remind them, not as a reminder of your from rags to riches, but to keep us in a state of mind where we're always thinking about the negative and very few times thinking about the positive. And then when we do put out the positive, they don't want us to be so close to that. So they talk about the positive as, oh yeah, I got $1 billion. I'm making this much money. So they still differentiate the artist from the people in the struggle. Because why? Now you're not in the same place that I'm in. Now at this point, right? I got millions and millions of dollars, so I'm no longer connected to your pain. I'm no longer connected to your struggle. Great point, Real Brooklyn. And Marcus Jackson, you said Nas's music is always relevant because he's intelligent enough to speak to whatever is happening in the world. Some of these young cats are popular, but not relevant at all because they ain't got nothing to say. Hey, look, all you have is your voice. And when it's all said and done, when the lights go out, right, and the mic is turned off, what will be your legacy? Will it be that you promoted slapping women, moving bricks, getting money? You 40 years old, 45 years old, that's your legacy in the music industry? Or will it be that you evolved, you changed, and you became a role model for your community? I mean, you got to ask these questions now. When we look at Nas, Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, I saw a track with Busta Rhymes and Big Daddy Kane I listened to the other night. When you see these guys and you see where they are, I mean, the fact is they are pushing the culture. Now it's becoming more and more acceptable for you to be an older man in hip hop. Remember, hip hop used to be a young man's game, young woman's game. Now it's becoming more acceptable. You could be in your 40s rapping now, but somebody had to take the hit to blaze that trail. Those who they say aren't relevant, they had to take that hit for allowing 40-something-year-old. So you mean to tell me at 40, almost 50-year-olds are rapping now? Jay-Z rapping, Busta, Nas is rapping, Big Daddy Kane still rapping, right? This just goes to show you there's a growth and evolution of the culture. So is he still relevant? Yes. Are we always talking about him? No. Do we need to keep talking about him? No. Is 21 Savage right? Sort of. But can 21 Savage match that? Only time will tell. Only time will tell. And guess what? Sometimes, given the plight of some of these rappers and the state and the lifestyle they live, I hope they tell that time very soon, because they may not be given and may not be blessed to live that long, to see the fruits of their labor, to experience that growth and that evolution of the culture. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Big shout out to my sister, Naomi Bleemer, for checking in and being a part of the conversation. We want to also thank Dr. Reagan McDonald Mosley from Power to Decide as well. Make sure y'all go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Show your support. If you enjoyed today's conversation, show your support. We need your financial donations to continue the great work that we're doing here of providing a platform for culturally relevant, informative discussions about what's happening in Black America and the impact of that, what's happening all across the country. So make sure you go to our website, blackstarnetwork.com. Also, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Black Star Network. We would love to connect with you. Also, while you're out there on social media, follow me, yours truly, Farajii Muhammad. You can find me on Instagram at The Real Farajii. You can also find me on Twitter at Farajii. And you can find me on Facebook at Farajii Muhammad. I need new followers, and so it is important that we get some new followers. So definitely send an invite to me so we can connect and continue to build our online culture crew community, because I definitely want to connect with you, and hopefully you want to connect with me, and we can do this thing together. We've been putting out the word that we are always looking for folks to tell us about what we're missing. So if you have some topics that you feel like we haven't been able to cover or have not covered yet because of everything else, make sure you shoot me an email at Farajii@blackstarnetwork.com, where you can join us and get on air to talk about a topic that you're passionate about. Not going to tell you, not going to have a conversation about something that you're unsure about. We want to hear from you to talk to us about a topic that you're passionate about that maybe we need to bring it to the larger community. So make sure y'all send me an email at farajii@blackstarnetwork.com, or just go on to my social media, hit me up via IG or on Twitter, and let me know what are we missing as we have these conversations about our community in this day and time. All right. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. Thank you. Thank my team, King Keenan, Ariel, Joel. Thank my control room for making today's show such a success. And most importantly, I appreciate y'all coming back and being a part of the discussion. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace. Have a great afternoon.